VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker, talking about the 0-1 Vikings. They had a 5-point spread in favor of them going into the Tampa Bay game, and they lost to Baker Mayfield's Vikings. I was there, like I am every home game, understandably disappointed, just like you. And I knew this would occur. Folks thinking that, these guys suck. And you should feel that way after the Tampa Bay loss. That was probably the easiest game on the schedule. There's also a chance that Tampa Bay is actually just good, and we underestimated them for 7 months of an offseason, but we'll get into that. I want to go over about 5 or 6 reasons why this doesn't have to be Doomsday, but I'll give a disclaimer out of the gate. Losing to the Buccaneers at home is not a good look. So indeed, there is a palpable chance that everybody else is right. The odds makers, 8.5 wins. This would be the way that the script would begin, not the script, the meme script that we like to poke fun at, but this is how it would start if the Vikings were indeed not very good, lose to Tampa, and then they spend the rest of the year chasing 500, kind of like the 2020 and 2021 seasons. But I'm not sold, and I don't think you should be either, that this team sucks. How could they lose to Baker Mayfield? And I want to go into several reasons why. So first, if you're an optimist or you're looking for reasons to say, why should I even bother watching Thursday Night Football? In 2015, you might recall, you were probably a Vikings fan then, the Vikings went on the road, so there's a difference here at home versus Tampa, on the road at the 49ers and looked like shit in week 1. One of the worst Vikings games I have ever watched, and I have been a fan since 1996. It was lifeless. And I remember getting up from the sofa after that game thinking, oh, God, maybe this Zimmer thing isn't going to work after all, because it was that bad, anemic, out the wazoo. Nothing was going right. And that 49ers team, who beat them 20-3 in week 1, I believe it was Monday Night Football, that 49ers team went 5-11. So it was a team that was putrid that stuck it to the Vikings 20-3. So there is precedent. Later in that season, the Vikings went 11-5, beat the Packers to close out the season, won the division until Blair Walsh ruined everything the following week. But this has happened before, where a Vikings team did not perform well, kind of like the Buccaneers yesterday. Lo and behold, showed up thereafter and had a good season. So this isn't like, they lost 20-17 to the Bucs. So that means you can put a fork in them. It doesn't have to be that way. We've seen it as recently as 2015, which in my mind is still pretty fresh. So we've seen this before. You can write that down. The Vikings have started slow in recent history, later won a division, should have won a playoff game. You get it. The next one is the defense. This Brian Flores defense looked marvelous in the first half, most of the first half. I looked at the ESPN box score on my phone, and I was like, these Buccaneers have 30 yards. And this was part of the game where the Vikings still felt like, all right, they're going to get this shit out of their system and end up winning the thing by 2 touchdowns. Early on, it was a defense that it felt like we haven't seen since 2019. And I was like, my goodness, if this is how it's going to, I was even texting my coworker, Yannick Eckhart in Germany. I was like, again, this is before like the real bad stuff started to happen. I was like, if this Flores defense is going to look like this, and this is close to the norm, and this offense eventually will hit its groove, this team's going to be good. Now, of course, that was dampened because they lost to the Buccaneers in week 1. But I kid you not, that Flores defense that was forcing 3-and-outs and making the Buccaneers look inept, that was an experience I haven't felt in my brain and body from a Vikings defense in 4 years. So, in a small sample size against Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, the Vikings defense showed up for about 2 quarters of football. And I think that means something. Like, the blueprint was there. Of course, thereafter, the Buccaneers figured it out with dink and dunk heaven. And that was a difference maker in the game, was the adjustment to keeping things underneath for the Buccaneers, and they ended up winning the damn thing. So I was encouraged by the defense. The second half defense didn't do much to attract my attention, but the first half I was like, well, wow, we're going to play like this. This is going to be great. And it didn't translate to a win, but it was a takeaway nevertheless. And then number 3 was Jordan Addison arrived to the party with a sweet balloon touchdown from Kirk Cousins, just a wonderful throw, an easy catch, and this is a very good omen. Perhaps the thing that you should take away the most for the long term is usually a first-round wide receiver who ends up like Troy Williamson or Laquan Treadwell doesn't do stuff like that in his first career NFL game. Yes, of course, Mike Hughes took a pick six to the house in 2018, and that was about it for his Vikings career. But I think the writing is on the wall with Addison that this guy is going to be good. In his first game, he made an impact. He appeared more impactful than KJ Osborne. And that's a big deal because you invested the 23rd overall pick in Addison. Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth didn't even play on defense yesterday, so we needed something to show, like, all right, what's Kwesi doing with these draft picks? Well, at least for 1 week with Jordan Addison, he got one of them right, and that's super encouraging because if Osborne's not going to be on the team next year, he's a free agent in a few months, then Addison indeed is going to be on tap for WR2, and he looked the part yesterday. Next is the run. The defense in general, once again, surrendered 242 yards to the Buccaneers. And I don't know if you think the Buccaneers offense is pitiful or you think it's average. You probably don't think it's good or great. But they only allowed the 242 yards, and that was the lowest by a Vikings team since November of 2020. That's why it felt so damn different, is because teams weren't marching up and down the field like they did in 2021 and 2022. So I think that this is also kind of like the Addison. This is a good omen that if the yards aren't flying into the box score for the other team, then there is a decent chance that this was only week one, that they're going to get better, and who knows what the ceiling can be for the Flores defense. But when I was driving home from the game, a 4-hour drive of sorrow, I'm trying to figure out, why did that defense feel different? So I got to my computer, I wrote up some reactions about the game, and then after that, I went and played around with the StatHead tool, and yeah, it was the lowest yards total surrendered to opponent since 2020. And if that's there in week one, there is a reasonable chance that's going to get better. And that's what I'm going to hang my hat on, is that I saw things that I liked about the defense. Because they lost, the narrative on social media was, defense sucked, back, same old stuff. And I guess I just didn't quite feel that way. And the run defense, on the whole, the Buccaneers ran it 33 times. They were committed to the run, unlike the Vikings, and for 73 yards. They had 2.2 yards per carry, and I guarantee you their fans and their locker room doesn't care that they only ran the ball for 73 yards on 33 carries. The takeaway for the purple team is that for once, first time in forever, they weren't an absolute leaky just sieve of rush yards. I've said on this show, about 7 times now, that during the last 3 seasons, when it was first down and the other team had a rushing attempt, I was elated if it was 2nd and 6, because that meant at least the bastard didn't get 7 yards. And yesterday started to change the tide where, all right, Rachaad White getting the ball. All right, he was stopped for 2 yards. That's the way it should be. We've got used to the death of the Zimmer defense and then Donatell's last year where the rush defense was a non-factor. So I think having Harrison Phillips in the middle and somehow Jonathan Bullard making somewhat of a difference. Kyrus Tonga hardly played, 9 defensive snaps. The Buccaneers, who very vividly wanted to run the ball, they did it 33 times, didn't really get anything going. And if the Vikings can build on that, stopping the run this season, I don't think we have to necessarily devolve into, they're going to go 7-10 or 8-9 or whatever the fear is right now. And one of the final things I want to leave you with, at least for defending anti-doomsdayism, is I really believe this in my bones, that if they trim the mistakes, whether that's Ed Ingram mind-bogglingly swatting the ball away from Kirk Cousins on accident, if KJ Osborne hauls in that touchdown or Kirk doesn't try to throw it in such a tight window, and then the one fumble where Kirk was just obliterated, if they can get rid of those or at the very least force 1 or 2 turnovers of their own, what I saw from the defense in the first half, and then even the offense when Jefferson was cooking, and then Addison was doing his thing, and Madison had that sweet catch and run for a touchdown, I think there is a pathway for this team to be pretty good. And I've talked before about the wide open NFC East after last night. Cowboys put themselves in the discussion, 49ers and Eagles. And I guess the Lions, if you believe in the efficacy of their Thursday night win over the Chiefs. I think there is a good team in there somewhere because the defense showed that it has the interworkings of being competent. I think we know that dumbass turnovers aren't going to follow the Vikings offense all season because they didn't really do that last year. And if Kevin O'Connell is the real deal and whips them into shape, I think that this football team can be a lot better than you're feeling right now Monday morning after a loss to the Buccaneers. Now, here's the caveat, is that they're probably not going to beat the Eagles Thursday night, which means, yes, for 10 days, we're going to talk about an 0-2 team that was going back to U.S. Bank Stadium, absolutely desperate to win over the Chargers, who are not a pushover. Yes, I see that writing on the wall. They probably won't beat the Eagles, even if they had their A game and they didn't have bullshit sabotaged fumbles from your own quarterback. They probably won't beat the Eagles because the Eagles are at home and they're the Super Bowl runner-up. But there is a path to get back on track, beat the Chargers, and then beat the Panthers, and then see how the chips fall in Week 5 against the Chiefs. I am melancholy that we're already trying to figure out how to get back to 500. That's not a good omen for a team that claims to be a playoff contender. But there also is that small chance that things go right. The Eagles have an off night, and the Vikings prove to a national audience that, yeah, no, we are for real. We didn't play well Week 1. Those were things that we can fix, and boom, they show up and beat the Eagles. I don't think I'm going to predict that, but I'm going to hope for it for the next 3 days. And I'll leave you with this. Just kind of a litmus test. I put this quasi-poll on the X app, Twitter, about a half hour ago. Is it more likely that the Vikings need to iron out Week 1 tomfoolery, those types of mistakes, and turn out to be a pretty good football team? Or is it more likely that they flat out aren't good, that they're going to be 6-11, 7-10, and everything last year was a mirage? Losing Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook and Eric Kendricks was too big of a deal. What's more likely? That they just have real nagging shit to fix from Week 1 to the tune of 3 turnovers? Or that they're not any good in the first place and everything you saw against the Bucs is the true story and we're tunneling towards some quarterback sweepstakes in the 2024 NFL Draft. Unsurprisingly, I think the first right now through 1 week of football is probably more likely. Now, if the Vikings were just moronic last year and had turnovers out the wazoo, I'd be like, oh man, it's more of the same. This coach isn't very good. But because they didn't play starters in the preseason, and a lot of teams had Week 1 jitters, I think the Bengals can tell you all about it. The Steelers would probably hop on that train. I think that the Vikings might be a victim of not playing your starters in the preseason and then correspondingly doing a lot of dumb shit in the first game. That's what I'm thinking. I'm open to your opinion. Toss it in the comments. But we'll be back tomorrow and then Wednesday, Josh Fry, to dissect what he saw in this Buccaneers game and then immediately get ready for the Eagles because that game is in three days from now. All right, 0-1, 2 better times. We shall see. Skol, baby.